Good morning. My name is Bill Giannone, and I welcome you to this month's webinar entitled The Real World, Mid-Year Analysis Done Right. Before I get started, I just want to apologize for my voice, suffering through a little bit of a mid-year cold. I always get it around this time of year. But I just felt that this information was so important. I wanted to make sure that I got this out to you guys as soon as possible, as close to the mid-year as we can. And I really think that it's important that you understand exactly what we're talking about here, because it's really a great time for you to start analyzing. When the calendar moves from June to July, it's really a golden opportunity for us to start looking at our company. We're midway through, so it's really easy to start analyzing things and say, are we halfway to what we think we should be? I use three terms. I use analysis, adjustment, and improvement. We should always be looking at the data that we've compiled for the first half of this year. And however we're going to look at that data, we have to be able to analyze it honestly and objectively. And I'm going to show you some really amazing things that one of our CREST members is doing right now, and I've gotten permission to share with you guys. Secondly, we have to analyze it. We have to be able to look at it and not just start to look at the numbers in a vacuum, but kind of look at why, a lot of the why as to why the numbers look the way they do and how we can progress to the I, the improvement, how we can make things better. Because if all the numbers are killing it, then we're doing great and we don't really have to do much. We just want to kind of keep the course straight. But if we have some adjustments to make, we want to make improvements. We know that that's very important to always be improving. The mid-year marks a perfect time to make sure you're on course for a successful end of the year. We always set up a plan at the beginning of the year. So far, you've spent 6 months working that plan. You're halfway through the year and you're halfway to the final destination. So just like if you're using MapQuest or Google Maps or your GPS in your car, you're obviously going to check the map every once in a while to make sure you're on course. And if you're not perfectly on course, you're going to be wanting to make the best possible ways to adjust to get yourself back on course. So in order to do that, we have a few questions we're going to have to ask ourselves. Why don't we start with those questions? First question, what are my year-end goals? Hopefully most of you have created a budget. Even if you haven't done a budget for this year that we're in right now, you had some idea of what you guys wanted to do. You had an idea maybe of number of jobs, or you had an idea of the amount of crews you want spinning, or you had an idea of what your marketing efforts wanted to look like. So be honest with yourself. Take yourself back to December, January, and ask yourself, what are my year-end goals? Not what they are now, but what were they at the beginning? Now ask yourself, as of today or as of June 30th, which is only a couple weeks ago, am I at least halfway to my goals? Remember, we're halfway through the year. Yes, there are cycles and there are patterns within the marketplace, but let's just say for the sake of argument that we want to be halfway to our goals. If not, what caused the shortfall? Guys, we've all been living through a pandemic, the likes of which nobody has ever seen before, nobody alive has ever experienced, and none of us in the business world have ever had to experience in terms of just how severe it's been to every single type of business, not the least of which is the restoration business. So obviously, many of us have been negatively impacted by the coronavirus pandemic. We need to understand what exactly or how exactly did the pandemic affect us? Because as things loosen up over the next 6 months, maybe they'll loosen all the way back to where we were. Maybe we'll have some starts and stops and things will loosen up and then they'll start to fall back slightly. We just don't know. What we do know is that we have to be prepared because we have to analyze and then we have to improve. So we want to do the best we can to make sure that we are in the right path going forward. Finally, we want to ask, how can I make adjustments to get back on course? It's not enough to know what's going wrong. You obviously need to know what the next steps are going to be. So that's a really, really important factor. Can you answer all of these questions? I'm here to tell you it's very, very difficult for you to answer all these questions without the use of analysis. So those answers will come through analysis. Guys, I was given the opportunity from one of our CREST members to share some information about their company. And I'm leaving off a lot of specifics about the individuals, but I'm sharing some information that's going to be very, very enlightening for you, because this is one of the first times you'll actually be able to see real numbers. What I'm showing you here is a budget that was put together by this company, which is showing you all of their statistics for residential water damage. They want to have 732 leads, or 2 leads a day. This happens to be a leap year, so 366 days in a year times 2 leads per day is their goal. And they have a closing ratio goal of 70%. Okay. As it relates to residential water damage numbers, they have a gross revenue target of $1.2 million for the year. They get that number because they're targeting 25 jobs per month on the residential water damage line items with an average job size of $4,000. So if you take 25 jobs times $4,000, that's $100,000 per month. Times that by 12 months, it gives you the 1.2 million gross revenue. Very simple metrics for the company to achieve. And they'd like to get a gross profit margin when all is said and done and all their expenses are covered, and their direct expenses on jobs we'll talk about in a little bit. They want to walk away with a 70% gross profit margin. Well, on the next slide I'm going to show you, you're going to see just how well or how poorly this company has done so far. These are actual numbers as of June 30th of this year. Their leads, which should be half of the first number, or 366, are only 290. We obviously can point very, very directly to coronavirus as being a major, major factor in this. The marketers have not been able to see a lot of their high touch and high presentation individuals and clients for months. Just in the last month did this marketer start getting back into the normal loop, and did he start seeing his plumbers and agents again. So that shortfall of 76 leads has absolutely been a direct cause. The closing ratio of 66.17% is not terrible, given the fact that this includes all types of leads that come into the company, some of which the company themselves deems to be unclosable, but still look like a lead. And that's basically how we judge. Anything that looks like it could be a job counts. When you get there and the homeowner just has a puddle underneath the sink and you tell him just mop it up with a rag, that still counts as a lead because we still responded to it. So unfortunately, the guy gets a negative for a no close, even though he did the right thing and helped the homeowner out. That's why we're not stringent about making sure that they make 70% or they get fired or they lose bonuses. We do judge every individual no sale on its own merits. In this case, some of the no sales came from people who were doing a lot of tire kicking while they were home. We got quite a few mold leads in the first half of this year that did not end up generating work for us. You'll see this in a future slide. When I talk about us, I'm referring to our CREST client. I work very closely with them, and I like to refer to all of you guys as us when I'm bragging or when I'm telling stories. Let's drill down into the water damage numbers, though. The gross revenue is way above average. $749,000 for the first half of this year puts us on target for 1.5 million as opposed to 1.2 million. That's a great, great gross figure number. You'll see the average job size is $1,200, or 30% more than what we target the average should be. That's a tribute to a couple of things. Number one, we have really effective writers. We have guys who really know how to write a really aggressive and perfect Xactimate estimate. We do use Xactimate on our residential water. We still find it's the easiest, safest way to get paid. This company does change the price list in Xactimate to conform to their cost of doing business. The pricing for them is about 8% higher than it is for the local Xactimate price list in their area. Yes, they get kickback. Yes, from time to time, they do have to work out a payment that is less than the full amount. But as of right now, I can tell you that this company is collecting upwards of 98% of their invoiced residential water amounts. So the amount that they're giving back is in the hundreds of dollars. It's not a really significant number. It's very, very aggressively done, and it's very well executed by the staff. You'll also notice that the jobs per month is just right on target at 24 versus 25. It's right there, even though the number of leads is way, way, way down. While the leads are hurting in other areas, we market these as just strictly residential water. We're hoping for other types of leads like mold, asbestos, contents, reconstruction jobs, even other types of residential jobs. And we do market for commercial work as well in this particular client. The thing I want to also point out to you is something that's really exciting to look at is the gross profit margin. This gross profit margin takes into account all salaries and benefits of every individual on the job, their entire burden. It takes into account all the materials and supplies that are purchased for these projects. It takes into account every single subcontractor that goes out. Many times we have to detach a countertop and we'll have to hire a granite company to come out and help us with that. That's included. All trash removals included. All additional labor on some of the bigger jobs, we might have to bring in some temporary labor to help supplement our own staff. All of those expenses are included in here. And yes, commissions paid to our marketing and production staffs are included here as well. After all of that, the company is operating 10 percentage points above its target profit margin. What do you think the owner's doing right now? Yeah, he's dancing because these numbers far exceed expectations and plans. When we put the budget together at the end of last year, we put together a nice, healthy profit that the owner could use to take some money out of the business and to invest some money back into it to establish a little bit of a growth pattern, but also to, like I said, take a little bit off the table and make himself a little comfortable. It's been a few years of hard work for the owner, and every owner wants to be rewarded. So at 70%, there was the ability to do that. Well, at 80%, we're talking about a real game changer here. That's an extra $75,000 so far this year that the owner gets to capitalize on and utilize for whatever purposes he wants. Now, that's in spite of fewer leads, and that's in spite of coronavirus. So yes, guys, it can be done, but it can only be done through analysis. The ability of this company to do these numbers only lies in the fact that from the first day of the year, they've been analyzing every single project. And that's why I'm going to get to the next area here. Real numbers give you the chance to do real analysis. I'm going to give you an analysis sheet that we've prepared. You may have seen this on some of my other presentations in the past. There are several CREST members who are using this right now. Again, this sheet comes from the one particular CREST member that we're talking about. So I want you to start studying this. We're going to go over this in great detail. Just take a quick look at this. This is an actual sheet of an actual CREST member. This shows you all the pertinent data in the company as it relates to the mitigation department right now and the marketing departments. So I'm going to go over some of the things in here, and I'm going to point out, you're going to see everything that's in here. You're going to see things that tell you how we're doing regarding leads, how we're doing regarding jobs and projects, and how we're doing on closing ratios. Look at the top here. We're going to show you that all the leads that come in are recorded, that there's 290 leads, but of those leads, they're broken down by residential and commercial leads. Yes, the company runs a separate commercial operation. They are the same people, but we keep track of all of the numbers differently. Let's face it, if I said to you $5,200 was our average for water jobs, but we had one six-figure commercial job, you might not know if the rest of the water jobs were 4,000 as we targeted, or were they less, and we just got helped out by one very large job. It's important to differentiate them. So we want to split them out. We split out the commercial leads from the residential leads. If you look on the right-hand side where the arrow's pointing, you'll see what we did here. We took the mitigation projects and we broke them out from the total projects. So far for the year, we had 176 projects with 172 of them being mitigation projects. And we show you the closing ratio of that 66.17%. There's a little column underneath that says open leads. Those are all the leads that have come in since the beginning of the year that has still yet to be resolved. The vast majority of them are reconstruction leads or some sort of construction or mold issues where the adjuster is going back and forth with us over time. There's very, very few water leads that would remain open. Obviously, there's also things like fire leads. When the fire job comes in, you'll start to see some of those sit around for many months while the adjuster goes back and forth with us. Leads and projects are broken down into these columns. So you'll see there's 3 columns. The first column is all about leads, and then the final 2 columns are all about project stats. That's actually the work being accomplished. In those 2 columns, the second and third columns to the right, you'll notice that we have them broken down by lead types, by the count, and then also lead types by the percentages, the closing percentages. And we do the same with the marketers, the PMs, and the loss types. Let's go through this and drill down even a little further, because this is really interesting stuff. And I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but I want you guys to all understand just how important these numbers are and just how important you have to understand how great and how very, very vital it is for you guys to see the numbers and then act upon the numbers. All the leads and the projects are broken down by lead type. So we can gauge the marketing success by who we're gearing it towards. You'll see the column on the left: plumbers, brokers, internet, house leads. Prep, which is our CREST exclusive program for pre-loss emergency plan. This company has been a CREST Prep member for many years. Unfortunately, in the past year and a half or so, they lost their prep marketer and have not taken on a new prep marketer as of yet. And that is why you don't see any prep leads there. Doesn't mean we're not getting commercial leads. They're just not directly generated from our prep clientele at this moment. You'll see I highlighted on the right-hand side, the statistics for the jobs are also highlighted by the breakdown of the lead source or the lead type. You could see out of the 180 leads we got from plumbers, we got 118 jobs, which comes out to 68.6% closing ratio. Not terrible. I would hope that most of you are doing closer to 75% of your plumber closed leads. This has a couple of different factors involved. During COVID, plumber percentages of closes went down slightly because homeowners took it upon themselves to vet the losses and didn't have the plumbers come out as often because of the fear of infection, which is quite normal. So we got quite a few leads from plumbers where they said to us, listen, I don't know what you're going to get when you go out there. They just said it looked bad. And then when you get out there, it's 2 little spots on a wall, which doesn't result in much. And we do what's best for the client and for our plumber friends. So that closing ratio is down slightly. In previous years, it was in the 73 to 75% range. Important to understand that. But if you look, you'll see the consistency across the belt. You'll see that, for instance, there's places that we can work on. The internet leads, we're only closing those internet leads at about 56%. Turns out, as we look lower on the sheet, and we'll get to it, when you get to the loss type, we got quite a few leads for mold that really didn't pan out for us. And it was early in the year when we realized that the mold campaign in the internet was probably not working to our advantage. And the company made some changes around April or May to start accepting less of those leads. But you'll see that's why there was a worse than expected result in the internet lead type. We also break them down by our marketers. You'll see 2 names there with an other. There was a third marketer name in here, and that third marketer name has since left the company, and we decided not to keep track of those numbers anymore. They left basically a week into the new year, so those numbers really are irrelevant for going forward purposes. But yes, we can capture the marketer stats. You can see David W. has provided us with 152 leads by himself. Now, that's about 25 leads per month over a 6-month span. That's a very, very good aspect for a marketer. We're tasking him with trying to get himself to 35 on average by the time the year ends. We're very, very hopeful and anxious and thinking that he can get there. But right now he's at 25, which for a COVID period of time was very good. His closing ratio with 91 signed projects is 63 and change percent. Again, does the marketer hold himself responsible for the closing percentage? Because don't forget, we've got PMs who close. So the answer is yes and no. We don't expect the marketer to be the one out there closing. We have systems and processes in place where our PM, our project managers, go out to sign the jobs up. However, we do think that there's a correlation between how the marketer is scripting his pitch and how effective we ultimately are at closing the jobs. Think about it this way, guys. If you're a plumber and the marketer comes to you and says, listen, I really think you should just give me everything you got. Just give me everything. Anything. If a customer just even thinks it's a loss, just give me a call. We'll run out there and we'll take a look at everything. That's obviously going to be a lower closing percentage for you than if you're a plumber who the marketer says, yeah, you go out there and you tell me if they're standing ankle deep in water or knee deep in water, that's the one you got to call me for. I'll go out there and help them out. Those are basically, 80 to 100% closes. So it's very important if you happen to see your marketers having low percentage rate closes, maybe it's something in their pitch. Because if you look at the two marketers, David's got twice as many closes as Wes, but Wes's closing ratio is almost 15 points higher than David's. So what's the difference there? Well, the only thing we can discern, because it's the same PMs going out to both jobs, the only thing we can discern is that Wes's approach and pitch to his lead sources is slightly more aggressive and slightly more direct than David's. And David is probably telling everybody, just give me a call and I'll see what we can do. So, we're very tough scorers here. We think that every call that sounds like a project counts as a lead, even if when we get there, it's a towel's worth of water. So that's what I said before, and I just want to reiterate that. So let's just understand when we talk about that. Let's get to those project managers. You'll see that we have two project managers listed there. And these two guys go out, and they're the ones, they are our first responders. They get the call. They're responsible for being on the loss between 30 and 60 minutes from the time of the first call. And they're expected to go out, and we give them the rule of the 3 S's. They have to sign the job, they have to scope the job, and they have to sketch the job. And that's their responsibility. And then we'll send out crews to do the work after. Believe it or not, guys, we track all of that as well, and we're going to show you some of those details later. Well, in this case, the PMs go out, and you'll see that in the case of Nathan, for instance, we're going to highlight his line item. He's 89 for 135, so he's been responsible so far this year for, let's call it 90 projects over 6 months, which is 15 projects per month. It's not an overwhelming amount. We think that these guys can handle about 20 projects per month because, like I said, signing, sketching, and scoping. They also have to build all of their own Xactimate invoices that get sent out by the office, and they're also responsible for helping to support those invoices should the adjusters come back with some questions or comments. So it's a lot of work. They're obviously, because they're the PM, they're doing all of the communication with the homeowners and clients. So that's also another big part. They are very much an admin person. These are guys who used to swing hammers and cut drywall. They don't do it anymore. They've moved on, and now they're much more responsible for how well the job gets done and not just the physical part of the job. If you look at his closing percentage is 66%. Once again, Nathan's a superior closer. He's almost always 75 to 80%. So when I look at his numbers and then I look at David's numbers, I can almost tell you guaranteed that both of their numbers are down slightly, hence the plumber numbers at the top being down, hence the overall closing percentages being down based on COVID, based on the fact that we're not able to get really solid leads and really solid emphasis on the quality of the lead. And we're doing a lot of fishing in the dark, let's just say. The internet will do that to you, but COVID did that to us. And I figured out that analysis for them. And they're very comfortable understanding that because Nathan's numbers are usually in the 75 to 80% range. He's an excellent closer. He's an excellent scope and sketch artist as well. We're going to go back. I'm going to take that line off a second. If you look at, we'll entertain the line with Christian. Christian's at 81%. That's great. Basically, we train our guys. We need them between 75 and 80%. Now, Christian's a newer PM. He's just on the job recently. But you look at his numbers, and he's 26 for 32. That's very aggressive. 81%. That's really, really well. Well, guess who trained Christian? Nathan trained Christian. So it doesn't make sense that Nathan's numbers would be so low and Christian's numbers would be so high. There has to be a factor in The factor is through the months of March, April, and May, when things were really kind of topsy-turvy with the COVID hitting in full stride, that's where we saw a lot of suffering. We did break down every one of our losses and leads by the type of loss as well, because when we do our budget at the beginning of the year, you'll remember back when I showed you that we budgeted 1.2 million for residential water. Well, we do budget every single type of loss. We budget commercial and residential water. We budget fire. We budget mold. We budget asbestos. We budget for sewage. We budget for tree falls. We budget for contents losses. And we budget for recon. We do all of those things. So we track each loss type, and we see that we've had 195 water leads, 116 signed jobs. Now combine that with the sewage, because sewage and water kind of go together, and we have 51 sewage leads and 43 signed jobs, basically telling you every time there's sewage, it's a job. There's pretty much a no-brainer there. Look at those numbers real carefully, and that just shows you to what detail. You could see we started to analyze the mold, and we're 6 for 23 in there. And we started to analyze the mold very early on in the year and saw that it was going sideways, and we abandoned that campaign, which took up a lot of the internet. Within these metrics, there are ways that we can drill down to even figure it out much greater, that we can break down the internet alone into these loss type categories. But for right now, this gives us plenty of granularity and clarity as to where we need to work, where we're doing really well, and where we want to really throw our stake in for the second half. You'll look and see how water and sewage combined, they ended up doing really well. And that's where we had our strength for the year so far. When I said we did 24, if you add the two of those up, you're at 159 losses just in those two line items alone. So that's where we're going to get the vast majority of our water work. Very, very important. And for this company, since water mitigation is the most important revenue source, they also track these jobs very carefully. Guys, I'm going to show you another sheet that we use to track our work. This one is to actually track the water mitigation losses by not only by the project managers, but also by the crew chiefs. Very, very interesting sheet you're going to see here. These, again, are real-time numbers. You'll see on the top right, the 80.59, that's what we showed you earlier on, the closing rate, the profit margins. That's very important. Also in the center, the 5202, that center in the tan, average job size. This is where we got those numbers from, guys. This is a sheet that generates for us our entire residential revenue and our commercial revenue year to date, number of jobs year to date. It breaks down the cost of the jobs from a separate spreadsheet where we track all of the expenses. And then it gives you the average job size, both commercial and residential. And it gives you the profit margins. Now, what did I tell you? This company targets a 70% residential margin after all expenses. Well, I didn't tell you about the commercial. They target a 60% commercial margin after all expenses. Commercial, a lot of times when you do time materials, you can't expect that same profit margin that you can on residential. The difference being your ticket size is going to be 2 to 3 times higher on average. And as you can see here, the residential is 5202, where the commercial is nearly 14,000 for an average ticket size. Now, in their budget, they will average, the budget did forecast rather, a $13,500 average job size. So it's right in target, but it targeted a 60% gross margin, and the company is actually doing 12 percentage points higher, or a full 20% higher profit than expected. So it's very important. I just wanted to make sure you understood some of those. We're going to highlight some of those line items. There's an incredible amount of data here for all different types of analysis. I don't want you to get too confused, but I'm going to start pointing out some items for you. You'll see every project broken down here into the groupings of either residential or commercial. At a moment's glance, we can see how well each division's doing, and we can forecast how well we should do by the end of the year. We can make sure that if there are things that we're having a difficult time with, that we can guarantee going forward that we can work harder either on our marketing or on our production side. You know, the cost of goods is tracked, the revenue is tracked. Those are the two starred columns. You'll see the revenue in the first starred column, 749 and 166. You'll also see the 145 and the 46.5. Those are the cost of goods. Like I explained to you, every single expense on a project. On one of the commercial projects that was fairly large, I know that we had to rent an additional supply of equipment. We needed some generators, we need some additional air movers, believe it or not, because we had run all the way down and we needed to do some additional rental. Those are included as well, obviously, in the cost of goods. So we get an average job size for each of them, and we get to get that gross profit margin. Very, very vital for analysis. We also track the performance of every project manager and every crew leader. I told you before, Christian has recently become a project manager, so he's only got 15 jobs under his belt, but you'll see Christian's name shows up twice because he's also a crew leader. So you'll look at his numbers. We break down and we're so granular because, guys, it's very important for us to understand the project managers' consistencies, and it's very important for us to understand the crew leaders' consistencies. Let me explain a little bit as to why that's important and why I think it should be important for you guys. Start with the project managers. I told you before, they have three primary responsibilities: sign, scope, and sketch. So they go out, they negotiate with the client, not price, but they negotiate. Yes, you need us. Yes, this is a serious project. They start discussing the project with them. They take their time, they build their trust, and they get a work authorization signed. Then they're responsible to go about and scope the project. They have to come up with an idea in their heads as to what this project entails, how much work is this, and what's this going to mean. And then they also have to sketch it out so that when it's time to do the Xactimate invoice, they are the ones who prepare the Xactimate invoice. So I need to know from a customer standpoint, or from a company standpoint, I want this CREST member to have consistent processes. And I can't stress this enough, guys. At the beginning of the year, the dollars all make sense when you put a budget together, but you can only guarantee success or failure by making sure that your processes are sound. If you've got crazy processes and you're doing well, it's only by accident. If you've got really good set processes and you're doing well, it's because the process has worked. So let me explain how I know from the PM side the process has worked. We've got three different PMs, three different guys out there writing three different ways because everybody's got their own unique ways. I couldn't take any three of you and put you in a room and have you write the exact same invoice and Xactimate. Now, we do train our guys to look for certain things, and we do train our guys that when they write their invoices to make sure they have a certain number of the traditional line items, and we make sure that they don't miss certain line items. They're trained consistently, but there's an art and a science to it, and the science is what we train, and the art comes in for each individual. Well, let's look at these numbers. Nathan's done the most jobs, followed by Stephen, followed by Christian, who just started. Stephen and Christian's average job size are almost identical. Nathan's job size is a full $1,000 more. So Nathan is either a much more aggressive writer, or he's had the advantage through luck of the draw, because we do have kind of a random distribution, that his jobs ended up being larger. But his jobs being 20% larger than the other two, it doesn't really matter, because now if you scan all the way across to the right-hand column where it says profit percentage, the profit percentage, Nathan is falling right at our residential profit margin. He is 0.6 of a percentage point below where we want him to be. The other two guys happen to be a couple of percentage points higher. But when we're talking about a total of almost $750,000 of money running through the company, and the delta or the difference in how these guys are writing is within 5 percentage points of each other. And Christian is artificially high because his sample size is small, relatively speaking. He will most likely drift lower. So we're really talking about a 2 or a 3 point sample size difference. That is what we call a statistical dead heat. There's no abnormality there. There's a consistency. To me, when I saw these numbers from them at the end of the first half, I was extremely excited. Now, we had tracked this after the first quarter, and we had started to look at it in April and May. But when you see it with a real depth of information, like a full 6 months, and you get to the point where you're only 3 points or so away from each other, that means that everything that's going on the PM side is very, very well oiled. That machine is moving very, very well. Well, guys, if you thought that was good, and if I got excited looking at the PMs, I got even more excited looking at the crew chiefs. Because here's what happens. The PMs set the scope. They do the sketch, and then they hand off the scope of work to the crew leaders. But we leave it up to the crew leaders to determine how many guys they think it's going to take them to do that job in a reasonable amount of time. You know, we all have different crew leaders, and we all have guys that whether we like to admit it or not, that are our favorites. And we have other guys that we think, oh, they're only giving me like a 50-50 effort, or maybe they're kind of just cruising through at 60 or 70%. Well, if that were the case, guys, you would expect that from job to job, there would be a consistency in their efforts that after you saw them on 15, 20, 30 projects, you would get a result that would make them stand out drastically from everyone else. Well, if you look in this case, I'm going to walk you through some of these numbers. You'll see 4 names here, and I'll let you know that one of the names here is no longer with the company. And if I gave you 5 minutes to look at the sheet, you'd probably tell me, all of you would be able to tell me which one. Let's take a look, though, at the sheet. We've got Christian, Francisco, Tomas, and Reggie. We've got 4 different crew chiefs, and we've got 4 different average job sizes, which is very interesting. Again, crew chiefs are assigned based on who's up next or who's available, or in some cases, who's the on-call team if a job comes in at night or on weekends. So the company usually runs with 4 crews. So these guys would be on call maybe 1 week a month. So you look at a guy like Francisco, who had jobs his average job size is nearly $2,000 more than Tomas and more than $3,000 bigger than Reggie's. He was by far had the largest jobs of all, followed by Christian, then Tomas, then Reggie. Again, luck of the draw. Why did Francisco, who had less projects, get projects that tended to be larger than Reggie's? There's no way to really work that out. We do make sure that these are randomly given out. There's no favorites involved, even though, like I said, we all think we have favorites. The reason why I don't like when a company has favorites is because it belies the facts, and the data here tells the owners why there shouldn't be favorites. Let's look at the data. Christian did 53 projects before he was promoted up to PM. So he was very, very aggressive. He was taking a lot of night and weekend shifts. He was filling in for guys when they would go on vacation. He just happened to get the lion's share of a lot of work at a time. Francisco's number was the lowest because we did offer the guys the opportunity, along with Tomas. We offered them the opportunity when the coronavirus hit, that if they wanted to stay home because they had any kind of issues with possibly contracting the disease and putting family members at risk, both Tomas and Francisco opted to stay home, and the company granted them a leave of absence. So their numbers are way down. Reggie came on during that period of time, so Reggie kind of didn't have a head start. So his numbers on a pro rata basis line up more with Christians than Francisco and Tomas, who missed the better portion of 2 months or so. But if you look at their numbers, the average job size we talked about, let's go over to the right-hand column, because that's where I said I got really, really excited. If you look at Christian, once again, little larger than the average job size, but his profit potential and his gross profit margins, about 2.5 points higher than the company average. Fantastic. Francisco, much, much larger than the company average, $2,000 larger per project than the company average, but his profit margin dead on, right exactly where the company profit margin came in. Tomas, right in line with the company average on job size, but his job profit margin, although better than what the company had programmed and targeted, well below not only the company average, but well below the rest of his compatriots. And finally, Reggie, who came on the latest, his projects are actually smaller than the company average. And yet his numbers within 1 percentage point of the company average, 79.79%. I actually went and drilled down a little bit into Reggie's numbers, and I realized that just out of the sheer luck of the draw, Reggie ended up with a whole bunch of self-pay, cash pay, money up front, walk away after the first day, or leave a little bit of equipment, but basically cash pay jobs, which our PMs are instructed, if you're doing a cash pay job and it's not a full-blown insurance mitigation project, for quick pay, they can obviously price those very aggressively. So Reggie's average job size was slightly smaller based on the fact that he got a lot of cash pay. We also know that if we're doing the right thing by the customer, we're not compromising what performance we would give the customer just because it's not going through their insurance carrier. So we still perform the services the same way. So the cost to the jobs should still be the same, resulting in a much lower profit margins. But Reggie was able to fight through that and still come up with a great profit margin. So, when I look at this now, obviously I said to you before, somebody was let go out of here. I'm sure by now you've guessed that it was Tomas who was let go because his performance was well below the others. When you're fully 7 points below the average and you're dragging behind everyone else, that's something that we couldn't rectify. And when he did come back, he came back from the coronavirus with a little bit of an attitude, and it was just best that everybody parted ways. So I was excited because at the end of the 6 months, if you look at the three main factors in the company, Christian, Francisco, and Reggie, those numbers again, they are within 3 percentage points of each other, all straddling the exact residential margin. So that not only tells me, just like with the PMs, that there's a consistency in the product that the client is receiving. There's also a consistency in how the project managers are relaying the information, and there's a great consistency on how the crew chiefs are executing the work. I would have told you that one of these three individuals, which was a much slower worker than the other two, and yet these numbers don't say that. If you would have told me, I would have said, well, if candidate A, crew chief member A, did the work in 42 hours, I would have guessed that it would have been 48 or 49 hours for the other guy, for candidate B. And it's not. They're all very consistent because the profit margins would not be this close if there was a significant difference in labor. Remember, guys, labor is the most expensive part of any project we do. It probably makes up 15 of the 20 percentage points of our cost. So in all of that, this is great, great data. Let's take a look at this sheet in its entirety one more time. This is incredible data, guys. If you're able to look at this, and this is something that the owner gets to look at every single day. This is an updated, as the work is entered into the system, it's updated every second. So is that other analysis sheet. So the owner every single day sits with me and we have a conversation over the phone or Skype or in person. And we discuss this every single day. We talk about trends, we talk about hotspots, and we talk about things that look good or look bad. And I'm telling you guys, this has been a huge help because we now know the things we needed to correct were all COVID related, and the things we need to make sure we strengthen and keep working on are bringing in more crew chiefs and making project managers work to the same level and keep just exactly what they're doing. That's what we need to do. This is great information, and it's the kind of information that you guys should have. Is your company gathering data like this? Are you capable of doing this kind of analysis of your business today? Those are two very, very important questions. If you answered yes to both of those questions, congratulations. You are absolutely on your way to an incredibly successful year because you had the ability to collect the data, you have the ability to analyze the data, and now you have the ability to make those adjustments, and you have the ability to move forward and make the second half of the year more valuable and more important for you. But guys, if you answered no to either one of those questions, then you need to call us today. With the CREST network, I said, this isn't just one customer of ours, one client, one CREST member who's doing this. There are several CREST members around the country who are taking very, very, very big steps every single day in gathering this kind of data, analyzing this kind of data. I've been working with them. Dick's been working with them. They're noticing a big difference in how they function. And I think it's very important not only for you guys to be able to do that, but I think it's very important for you to admit that if you're not doing it, you're not far off. You're really one phone call away. That's all I'm asking. Just if you want to do it, there's no shame. It's not a pride or an ego thing. It's the most important thing is make that next call. Just give us a call. I will be more than happy to sit down with you, go over these numbers, go over how you can start building those numbers for yourself. And remember, it's never too late to start. On behalf of Dick Wagner, I really want to thank you for joining us this week. And we look forward to hearing back from you on anything regarding this or any of our other webinars. And until next week, this is Bill Giannone saying thank you so much for being a CREST member and have a great day.